signatures for right now, is the fact that when they did do this last issue to us, now we've got to go back to the federal government to stop the plan because someone wasn't there to represent us. And you need a representative, someone who's gonna step up and say, no, wait a minute, you sprayed this on us, we didn't do it to ourselves, we're sick, we're paying for it, you need to reimburse us for this. And if we get this funding, then that makes them understand that they have to be a bit more careful, and if it happens again, they're gonna be held accountable again. It has to happen every time. So, part of what I'm hoping to do as councilman is elected is to be in a position to represent you against companies who have a history and a practice of not listening to you, okay? When it comes to contracts, when we talk about tax abatements and in lieu of tax agreements, they got that money. They got the tax money, you paid for it. Okay, what are we getting in return? Well, those things should be to, see, the tax agreement, they should be set up to where, once they have the tax money, we should be reimbursed for that for, I can't think right about now, but, I got so much information. But anyway, the deal rests with the fact that you have to have someone who's gonna represent you. And when we have industries like Veolia, who has the attitude to tell you that they're not gonna hire Port Arthur people, what do? Well, with the tax agreements that they already got, they say, look, in a sense, we got all the money we need. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna give you the extra 15%. Most refineries are paying 80% of the tax value. But with Veolia, they're giving you another 15%. So they say, well, we got the money. We don't wanna hire Port Arthur people. We don't want you to tell us to hire Port Arthur people. So that's what we're gonna do. But just think, what if Motiva, Total, BASF, Valero and all of them say, well, you know, that's a pretty good idea. So what we'll do next time, we'll give them the 15% more. So that means we won't have to hire Port Arthur people either. So now you got 5 of the major refineries in your backyard that won't hire your people because they're paying more taxes, okay? Who's gonna stand up and fight for that? I will. I don't know if my opponent will because she works for me. I don't, but I certainly can represent you for that. I've done it. I brought my company Total to the table to the tune of $100 million lawsuit because they wasn't hiring folks from Port Arthur. They wasn't promoting people from Port Arthur. When folks take tests at Port Arthur, the industry, they sit there and watch certain people take the test. When other folks take the test, they leave and go and have lunch. Well, I put them in a 5-year agreement with the EEOC, and they had to report that, just like we're doing with a compliance officer. So what I'm saying is, as representative of District 4, I think you have to have someone who you have history with, that you know they've got a little bit of vision, and also some experience in dealing with areas that will help them to be able to know what's going on when these things are taking place behind closed doors, and they're willing to fight for you when the time comes. That's it.
Sure, can I go? Because I need to go. I just want to say something, I'm gonna run. Okay, and that's with the 2 candidates and also with Mr. Trainer, who's gonna be in that lodge. And Mr. Trainer is gonna be a key position for the community because in order for us to get things accomplished, we need 5 people on council that agrees. And that's why it's important that when we cast our votes, we don't just concentrate on selection of District 4. That'd be the worst thing you can do. You need to make sure that we put people in the other positions that's gonna be able to do what Ms. Miguez said, what Mr. Mosely has said, and what people are saying. I've been there, I've done that. You can go in there with all of the answers. You can go in there with the right fight. You can know what needs to be done. But if you don't have 4 other people with you, you ain't gonna win. So your challenge is not to say what you're gonna do. Your challenge is gonna be, how will I be able to influence enough people to understand what I'm saying. And in order to do that, you gotta be committed to put a lot of time to do research, so when you're talking to your fellow council people, those who don't want common line will be forced to common line, because you're using facts, so it's gonna take a lot of work. But, everybody know our problems. We all got solutions. But what I know from experience, and Mr. Troy can elaborate on it and probably tell you what's to get out of here, is it's about integrity and about honesty and commitment. You know, I served in 2 years. I didn't miss any council meetings. Okay? Because I wanted to be there to represent the people. I'm gonna vote to protect the money. I'm gonna vote against the frivolous contracts, the waste of money. That's what we need to represent today. Now, we get the council person in, then once the council person in, we as citizens, we gotta not leave it up to them. We gotta start going to meetings. We gotta be there to support. That's what's gonna turn this around, not a person. I went that route. You're gonna be labeled a troublemaker on council, or big mouth on council. So don't get me wrong, Ms. Miguez, but when you say I'm gonna fight, and Ms. Moore, when you're up, I'm fighting, no, what's gonna happen? They're gonna say, oh, those are troublemakers. And I'm telling you, you gotta have a plan B. And your plan B has got to get the people to rally behind you. And if you want people to rally behind you, you gotta show them that you really care, that you got integrity, that you're honesty, and you're not gonna go up there and go along and get along. And I would like to stay and listen to everybody, but I gotta be at church.
I got a question before you leave. You're saying
Yes, ma'am.
not only vote for our district, our councilman for the district, but we need to be concerned about that at-large.
Let me tell you something.
Both the at-large.
You know what? The two at-large positions are more important to the residents out here than this one position. Believe it or not, your councilman is the one for 4. But those two at-large is more important. If you don't put people in those positions, your councilman can't do nothing. Those at-large positions, if they don't have somebody that's, they're gonna be committed to the whole city.
That's right.
And when your councilman says, I need this road fixed, those two at-large people should have said, yeah, we went out there, we do need to get that road fixed. And when you start getting several council members, now it's no longer a troublemaker, it's something we gotta listen to. So those two positions are just as critical than the one for District 4.
Exactly right.
If you want to really get things going. That's what's important. So, yes, your District 4 represent this area, but your two at-large positions are even more critical because they also need to be able to support what that councilman brings to the table for the district. Because if he brings it to the table and the other council members don't agree, if you don't have 5, it dies.
That's right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. That's exactly right.
Our meeting might run just a little bit late, but I want to give Mr. Trainer an opportunity to
Oh,
get up and say a few words before we ask the question.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ms. Miguez and Mr. Mosely. I am running for position number 7, which is, look like, well, the Goose almost said everything that really is curious about, but I enjoyed your presentation, and I enjoyed your presentation. Regardless of whoever wins, I want to be able to work with that person. And the reason why I want to be able to work with that person, just because I oversee a city. District 4 is very important, just like District 2. I want to make sure that when the councilman comes to me and say, hey man, we like to do this or we like to do that, I said, well, okay, what the people want, because it's all about the people. Then I will be responsible for working with that council person. Together we can get it done. Divided, we can't do anything. We already know one person cannot control city council. That's why they got 9. I'm willing to get there and go to work. We already know I'm a fighter. So I'm definitely willing to get in, get my hands dirty, get my feet dirty, get my hands gripped while we can fight to get this job done. But definitely this position here, whoever wins it, I want to be the person that be available to work with you. And that's for all the city of Port Arthur, okay? I turn it back over to you, Karen. I do thank you for your time.
Thank you. At this time, we have questions for any of the candidates. Ms. Regina?
I do, and it could be, I'd like both candidates to answer it. Because my concern as somebody who is returning back to Port Arthur is employment. I didn't go to college for 4, 5, 6, 7 years to work outside in a refinery. I don't even care about working at a refinery. So what I'm looking at is employment, and my concern is that yesterday over 1,500 people stood in line to receive low-income housing vouchers. That represents to me that over 1,500 people in this city are either underemployed or unemployed. So I don't care about streets. I don't care about any of that other stuff. My concern is jobs and employment. So I would like to know the priority and what exactly are you planning to do? You know, not the fantasy. I want to know what exactly are you planning to do? It doesn't matter.
Well, that's where, on my second part of mine, is the city. I have a love for downtown, and you know, as far as the rebuilding of downtown Port Arthur, you know, one of the things that I've said in the past is I don't understand why Port Arthur is only exciting 1 week out of the year. Mardi Gras is not enough, and I think if we could do something downtown, even if, you know, you gotta start small and then slowly grow out. And if we could, like he said, with one block at a time, or whatever, one business at a time,
Right.
whatever it takes, if we can get those businesses back open. I wanna work with the refinery, I totally respect that, you know, because I'm in and out of the office, I get my hands dirty where I'm working, you know, and I'm not sure about the numbers he's talking about, because I work with a lot of people from Port Arthur at my facility, and we have a very low head count. You know, we have less than 200 people that work there. Actually, I think we're down to less than 150, and I have a very, you know, percentage-wise, we have a lot of people from Port Arthur, and actually a lot of them I went to school with, you know, because I've told you about Robert and all.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got 2 degrees, 6 years of college too, but because it is so difficult to get a job and a good job, I have to go get dirty. You know, I have to get out there and suit up and do what I gotta do, because I need the job to take care of my family. And I totally respect that. And I understand everybody has a different personality, they have a different love. You know, some people are made to be restaurant people, some people are made to clean up at hotels, whatever. There are jobs out there for everybody, you just gotta figure out what you wanna do. And the thing is opening up those opportunities and make them selective. You get different opportunities. You can have a restaurant here, you can have a gift shop, different types of businesses if we can bring them in. And then at the next level is trying to establish not just a 1-year event, maybe a monthly event. You know, or maybe we could start quarterly to try to establish something downtown to bring the population down there and start spending their money there. Then that will encourage the businesses to open up jobs. Downtown Port Arthur is where I think the first focus needs to be.
Okay, thank you.
Well, for me, it's as I said before, it's the ability to try to encourage our youth to get involved in projects, even in as early as the 10th and 11th grade. I own a business. I've had several businesses. Real estate and land development company. I'm successful in that. I still buy and sell real estate. So I have the attitude that if we can get more folk or youngsters involved in the employment area of our city, that would help us increase the employment levels. Years ago, there was a big argument about kids going to school and not being able to, when they graduate, they weren't ready for the workforce. That was when Mayor Ortiz was in office. And Dr. Johnny Brown was the superintendent. And working with that, Dr. Brown felt like, you know, well, we got kids that finish high school and they're not getting jobs. So in bringing those two together at our station, they began working on projects that were helping kids understand that, okay, the 10th and 11th grade, we'll start working you towards things like shop, auto mechanics, plumbing, and wiring. So when they graduated from high school, the city can filter them right into the system. That's what I was doing. That's what I'm still doing. So with this one block at a time that I talked about back in 2008, the city authorized me under resolution number 07009, which authorized Stephen Mosely to support him in his efforts to create an arts and entertainment district in downtown. Now that's what the council did to me. They chose me to allow me to do that. My point was, you take one block. As you look at downtown Proctor now, it's all flat, except for a couple of buildings. It's disgusting. But my plan was to take one block at a time. And it would look, of course you know how it looks now, but it could look something like this. You take one block and you build maybe a 4,000 square foot facility. And each one of those facilities in each block would have 4 or 5 different businesses, okay? And if you have 4 or 5 different businesses, you're bringing people downtown. One could be a hair shop, one could be a restaurant, a nail shop, a shoe shop, okay? Well, you say, well, how would you do that? Well, what I did, I went out and I talked to a bunch of different businesses and asked them, say, look, if we build this building downtown and let you go into it and rent it for 1 year, free of rent, don't pay anything for 1 year, and you pay insurance on it and pay your light, gas, and water bill, would you be interested? And they said, well, yeah. So I put together a letter, it was called a letter of consideration. It wasn't a contract, but it was a letter of consideration, say, yeah, we would do that if the city would do it. Well, I brought in a deluxe cleaners, furniture store, Living Word Christian bookstore, Seeker's dress shop, Norma's t-shirts, Diners Defensive Driving, Dante Factory, and a bunch more. So what I'm saying is these are simple things that you can do to get folk to come back downtown to start a business. And if they do that, after 1 year, they get locked in, you do a contract with them that after that first year, free rent, then they begin paying whatever the market pays for. In other words, it could be 5 cents or 10 cents or $1 per square foot. Now you got businesses coming downtown, and these folks begin hiring people. They're hiring the youth who come out of high school, they can get a job. Now you're creating some economic diversity. We talk about the refineries, like you said, you don't want to get in a refinery? Well, not everybody's going to be a refinery worker. Not everybody's going to be a sports athlete. But maybe some of these kids may want to start their own business. This is where they get started in these different shops. So you've got that going for you. That's my plan for economic development and folks getting jobs.
Thank
I have a question. My concern is not so much with jobs, because we already know there are jobs here. My concern is employment for local Port Arthur residents. That's my concern. I'd like to know what you all plan to do about Port Arthur, not local, because local could be Needle, and I'm talking about Port Arthur. The reason why you saw those lines on the highway is that ought to tell you something right there. If you can't get a job, how can you afford a house? You just can't afford it. And not every youngster, middle-aged person in Port Arthur, they're not on drugs. I know a lot of people want to work, but they cannot. And there are local Port Arthur people get a job, and that is ridiculous.
Well, I'll tell you my experience basically is you know, what we have done, and I want to make the station, the radio station, as a pivotal point, but it's one that we have to talk about because most people who call the station are always trying to find out who is my counselor, who can I go to complain about my ward in there. And a lot of folk call in about jobs, because they don't know what the jobs are. So what happens is when we find out where a job is, we broadcast it. We let the whole citizen of Port Arthur know where to go and apply for jobs. And many times, these companies won't have a hiring site in Port Arthur. It'll be in Needland. And then where our kids find out about it when all the jobs have been filled.
Right.
It's too late. So again, when I talk about in my plan about a compliance officer that we all talk about, we have to get sufficient members on council, like Councilman Doucette said, former Councilman Doucette said, we got to get folk on the same page who will be willing to say, okay, look, industry has promised us jobs, jobs, jobs. and they say they're gonna do the best job they can to hire local. Well, local used to be
Right.
Port Arthur,
Right. It's not-
but now local has expanded to a
Right.
10-county area.
Right.
At my refinery, I went to my plant manager, and I talked to him, and said, look, you know, we need to hire Port Arthur people. You know, you get in these tax abatements, and you get in these in lieu of tax agreements, and you're saying you're gonna do the best you can to hire local, but every year, we see you guys not hiring Port Arthur people. So I had this plan called Just 10, I showed him. That's what I was telling you earlier, just 10 employees. I said, Total has 400 to 500 employees that you have hired. I say, and I can count us. We know who we are. We live in Port Arthur. I know everybody out there, everybody who works there. And he said, so, well, what does that mean? I said, well, if we just had 10 employees from Port Arthur, I said, well, we can't hire just because they're black. I said, wait a minute. I didn't say anything about black. I said Port Arthur people. So you see, the stigma is there. So we have to remove the stigma. When they were talking about hiring Port Arthur people, the first thing they jump on is, well, we can't hire them because they're black. And that's not fair. That's not right to us. If you pass the test and you do what's necessary to get employed, you should get employed. Because I can walk from here to the grocery store right now, and I can run into 2 or 3 people. I know for a fact my wife and I did just this weekend. Where I left from, guy said, oh yeah, my nephew just got hired at Valero. Where's he from? Well, he was up in the country. They had a new home up there, and so, you know, he got a job at Valero. His wife, they're going to move back down there, so they're going to build a new home, but she's staying with me now. I said, well, how long did that take? Well, he just hired and got on. So I'm saying, okay. But our people live right here around the refineries, at the back door of the refineries. Can't seem to get a job. We did a radio show one time, and my plant manager was doing his own show, because that's what we do. We gave all the refinery managers their own radio show. So that way people can know what the companies expect of them. And then the citizens can call in and ask, you know, what can we expect from you guys? What is it gonna take for us to get in there? Well, this was one lady called in and asked and said, Mr. Manager, I heard you say everything about what it takes to get a job. You gotta have a good education. You gotta finish college. You gotta pass the tests out there. You gotta pass the physical. Say, well, my son, you know, y'all even took hair out of his head and he passed the drug test. He said, we still haven't got a job.
And most of those refinery jobs, you get hired on, they will train you for the positions that you applying for. So you don't have to go to school to have a PhD to get a job at the refinery. They will train you for the job. So there's no reason to them to say that they don't have the education, because if I know people who's been out there, they get elevated and they got trained for the job. They're still out there. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I bring to the table experience that helps me to understand the process.
That is why we need to hold industry accountable.
That's it.
And that's why I said on my first,
That's it.
under the plan number 1 of my platform, it's called a compliance officer with agents. Not just a compliance officer, but you got to have agents. And what happens is sometimes you do them like they do us. Every once in a while, they grab us and say, okay, today is your day to do a drug test. It's random drug test. So with a compliance officer and agent, that's what you do. Today is your day to turn in your reports and let us know how many Port Arthur people you got working.
That's the only way you
But you
can
got
have a
to
check
have
and
someone
balance
who's gonna
system.
represent you there, that's gonna hold them accountable.
We're fixing to have to start our
Sorry.
other meeting. Did you wanna?
No, it's the accountability is the key, because I'm seeing all these, you know, I see certain candidates, you know, that they're looking for reelection that are promoting that they were involved in the program, that, you know, they're gonna be hiring so many Port Arthur individuals to work for their companies. You know, they're making all these promises and stuff, but I don't know where the accountability is. You know, there needs to be a program in place to where, okay, you're getting a tax cut because you're gonna hire 10% of the, you know, your employment population is gonna be from Port Arthur, but who's going back tomorrow and saying, okay, show me the numbers. How many did you hire? If you didn't match the number, you need to be paying some money back, or you need to make you need to make an effort over the next, you know, hold them accountable to where, hey, you've got 30 days to get your numbers up where they're supposed to be. Have these people working, they're employed. And I'm not talking for 90 days. They need the jobs and they need to be kept in those jobs, trained to do them, so they can advance. That, when they advance, that opens up that job again for the next person that's looking for one.
You have one more
I
question?
just have one more, and it's just about, the tax base, because a lot of our funding comes from grants, but you can't really run a city adequately with grants, so you have to have that tax base. You're gonna pay taxes, you know, that's just a part of life. So how are we going to create a method of, home ownership for young people, middle-class people moving back, so that we could promote more so than living in apartments and renting, but actual home ownership, so that we could pay taxes, so that the city can have some form of revenue to actually function and grow. I love the woodlands, so, like
Yeah.
the woodlands, like we talked
Exactly.
about.
Yeah.
So, either one,
But, you know, that's one of the things that's important is home ownership, because if you actually really take a hard look at the population, there's a lot of rentals out there. The people that are making money on those homes in Port Arthur don't live in Port Arthur, you know, and so but it's probably for me, and, you know, cause I'm going through it, I just built a home, and I cannot finance it out from under the builder. I can't get a mortgage right now, because the appraisal came back too low. And I don't have 20 grand to drop on my house as a down payment. And that's the thing, is there needs to be some kind of programs working with the banks. It needs to be, a relationship with them, so that they're going to offer programs for especially children that are not gonna have the thousands of dollars to put down. They need to have some sort of program established that they can have an opportunity to purchase a home. And it could be just a starter home, something small, but it's at least give them the opportunity, if they can come up with $1,000 or whatever, a very small number, or even zero down, and have it for short term. If the down payment could be spread out over the first 12, 24 months of the mortgage.
Right.
Just something that offers up an option for young buyers, and it ain't just young people, I'm talking people our age too, that need to get out of the rent nightmare, you know, because I was living in it. I was living in it until I built, and I got fortunate enough that I found a builder that built my home with no payments, no interest, nothing, for 6 months. They just start building my house. You know, and that's all well and good, but I didn't know that, you know, because they made a bunch of promises to me, and, you know, this is my poor choice of builder. You know, I should have done more research in the builders around here, which is a whole nother issue for Port Arthur, is that they were telling me they did the comps. They did the appraisals. They said, you got it, you're already secured, you got the mortgage, whenever the house is built, we're gonna finance it, you're already taken care of. Well, when it came down to it and it was time to finance it out from under the builder, I got a whole different story from the appraiser. You know, and so here I am, I'm paying almost 10% interest on my house to the builder because I can't get it mortgaged. You know, and it's because the community, they're saying, has devalued my home, and I didn't even live there yet. You know, they actually aged my house a year the first week I lived there. You know, and to me, that's underhanded by the appraisal. The appraisal company that they brought in needs to be held accountable for what they did to me.
Right.
You know, but I have to deal with that because I'm told by law that I'm locked into that appraisal. I just have to work with them and convince them to raise the value, or, you know, see if we can negotiate. And there needs to be programs to help control that, or to educate people like
About
me
that.
not to make that mistake. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you.
Yes, how you doing?
Well, I was gonna just ask a
Oh.
question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
To the business of housing, you know, we've got to the point where we're oversaturated with public housing. I think everybody has come to that conclusion. And housing is a serious deal. Everybody needs to be in a home with their family, you know. But what I get from folk is that, look, we already have houses that are already built. And there's money that's been set aside. So maybe if we take some of that money, instead of building public housing, renovate and repair these existing homes, that maintains the establishments of those neighborhoods where they normally live, instead of uprooting them and taking them on the other side of town and they have to be reestablished in schools, reestablished in neighborhood services and all. And they would love that, to have a nice, decent home. But the problem is, when you're building public housing, it's almost a trap, because once they get in there, it's like you can't make this much money, so you can't have a great job, a good job, because your rent or your expenses is gonna knock you off the program. But jobs and housing and homes work hand in hand. So if monies are utilized for the purposes of renovating some homes that are existing, then you can look at the middle income folk and let them, give them some of that money so they can buy a better house, a bigger house, and now you got another family that can move into another nice existing home. That's how you do that. It's not rocket science. That's how you do it.
Yeah, it seems you must have been reading my mind, Mr. Mosely. I hear everybody talking about jobs and devaluing of homes. I was just going to ask pretty much something similar, how both candidates thought about public housing. Because yesterday we seen about 1,500 people was at the Port Arthur Civic Center. And that doesn't look good for Port Arthur. And whenever other people from refineries and other businesses see Port Arthur, they have that image. And also people from other cities work in HR, so if they see an applicant with a Port Arthur residence, they're gonna equate that to poverty. Now I just wanna know what both candidates thought about adding more low-income housing when the state's averages more than, when Port Arthur's average is more than twice the state's average in government money is given to these public houses. I just want both candidates' thought. I think you've already pretty much said what you could say. Ms. Miguez,
Yeah, and I completely agree with him, and that's why I was making the statement that there needs to be programs established to help people purchase their own properties. You know, if a discounted rate, you know, if we can offer a refinery a discount on taxes to give jobs, then why can't we offer a person a program to give them a discount on a mortgage, say for the first 5 years or whatever, you're gonna spread out your down payment over this many months at whatever rate they can afford. Give, they have all the balloon mortgages and the reverse mortgages and all that nonsense, but there needs to be programs established for people to get them in homes that they can afford. Because the problem with getting into mortgages, then you get the insurance and then the taxes and everything else. So they have to be educated that it involves more than just a house payment, because you're also gonna be having to come up with all this other money that they may not realize. And insurance companies is important too, because they like to gouge people by where they live. You know, it's ridiculous to know that you gotta pay $6,000 a year for insurance on a house, or taxes, it's crazy. It's crazy, because your tax bill should not be more than your mortgage.
Let me see if I can help us understand. What we're looking at here, like most of us in here, I'm over 60, so we're kind of retired, and we're in a kind of set income. Like I usually say, when I go to stores, I want to buy my hamburger, but I want my 10% discount, my 10% discount. So when we get locked into those kinds of payment scales, in other words, our living style, we can't afford the water bill to go up another $5, and the gas bill to go up another $5, and the sewer to go up another $5. Because now we're having to try to decide if we're gonna buy 5 pills today, or do I pay the light bill?
Or do I not take them at all?
That's right, see? So the deal is, we have to have a system by which our tax base is expanded. You have more things going on, more things putting in paying into the tax base. And what caused that? More jobs. If more people work, more people pay taxes, more people buy gas, more people pay water bills. And see, that's how the city's budgets get balanced. The city don't make money on a bunch of investments. They make money off of your expenses. Your garbage bill, your water bill, your property taxes, and all of that. But if you're building more public housing, who you think getting paid? The city's not getting paid. They're not getting taxes off of that. It's the investors. The investors are getting paid because they're building more public housing. They get money off the top, and they get money from rent from the federal government. And when they can't get somebody in there, they put someone else in there. And before the next contract, the rent goes up, because there's no rent control. So now you're actually forcing people who are trying to get in there. When they're in there, they're going to be forced out because they can't afford to pay. So that's what we have to watch out for when we start looking at all these other housing projects coming in, as opposed to developing the homes that we have. It's simple. you know? And it all goes back to jobs. If more people worked in Port Arthur, and I'm not just blaming industry, but industry is some of our largest employers. And then they have contractors, subcontractors. That's where we have another one of our problems. We got a lot of subcontractors can't get jobs. They can't get the contracts. And these are African Americans, the minorities who live in Port Arthur, who finished high schools here. They did all the right things, and now when they get their job going, they're paying taxes to keep the paperwork going every year, but they can't get a job with a subcontractor because, well, you qualify for this, but you got to have this. So now the field changes. So every time they get qualified for certain things, the field changes. So we have to find a way to tie this down, and that is with a compliance officer. I can't say that enough, to nail these people. Minority contractors in Port Arthur can get contracts, because if your husband get a job, a contract, and he's getting paid, now he can go buy gas, and he can buy food. So if he's buying more food, more of those people are buying food because they got contracts, now the grocery store got to hire more people. So you see what I'm saying? So the ball gets to rolling, and that establishes more and more of your financial base from taxes. And then maybe start doing rollbacks with taxes. Say, well, okay, well, we're making enough money now. The budget is topped out. We can roll back the taxes instead of being 50 cents. Now we can get it down to 40 cents for $100 valuation. So now instead of paying more for your water bill may go down $5 instead of go up $5. These things mean a lot to someone who's on a fixed income. But you got to have someone who understands this as a business person and someone who's worked with this kind of stuff before. Because if not, you'll have this going on all the time. And only a few or a handful of people are going to benefit.
Give you 2 minutes for a charge.
So we can get
I
other
don't have, I got a question, but I know we got to go into the regular meeting and everything, and I'd like to make it clear, just to get some things clarified, so that all the candidates can understand what's happening. We just did some industrial contracts, and the contracts that we had, it took a while to get those contracts together, because we had some professionals, contractors to come in that this firm don't do anything but industrial contracts. And the mayor is here, she can vouch for this. They came in and they made us a template model in which we can go to the industries with a single contract. Instead of having a contract with this one, a different contract with each one, we got a single contract. Jobs were tied in to those contracts. There is a contract, their contracts are in place, and those contracts do have jobs specified with them. It starts off like 95%, which is just a little short of annexation, if they don't hire nobody. No more Port Arthur citizens. They still have to be 95%. And they get reductions based on their employment level. How many new employees they got. And they have, if I'm not mistaken, was it April 15th they had to turn in the baseline?
I think.
Yeah, something like that, baseline. They had to turn in the baseline by January the 15th. They had to turn in baseline for the number of Port Arthur employees that they had, and April 15th they have to turn in the number of new hires that they've hired since then. And their taxes is calculated based on the new hires.
Those new hires are Port Arthur residents?
Yeah, Port Arthur residents, not local, Port Arthur residents. Now, that was all added in, all that was put into the contracts, and it was, it went to the wire, because we were like, we had to have these contracts signed by December the 23rd, or we were gonna have to have a special meeting on December the 24th for annexation. And they came in the evening, I think Valera was the last one to come in. They came in the evening of the 23rd, and they agreed to the contract. They signed it, and that made us have to cancel the 24th, the meeting for the 24th of annexation. So those contracts are in place, jobs are tied to them. it's supposed to be, a compliance officer. I wasn't at the meeting when they got the compliance officer. I was off sick, because I had surgery back in October. And I don't know, I know there's supposed to be a compliance officer. I'm not sure who that person is. But, a compliance officer, you don't have an agent, but it's just a compliance officer. That is the point. Another point I wanted to make sure that all of the candidates understand is that on this thing with housing, yes, Port Arthur has 2.5 times the state average for low-income housing. And as you just saw, they had 1,500 and something people at the Civic Center for vouchers. There's the Port Arthur Housing Authority had 1,800 and something people on a list last year. Low-income housing and Section 8 housing. I asked Mr. Casada to give me a list of those, how many of those were from Port Arthur and how many were not. And it ended up that 46% of them were Port Arthur residents. The rest of them were all from somewhere else. See, when you get a voucher, it don't say that you gotta live right here. That voucher, you can live anywhere. 1,500 people came here. We got 1,500 people come here. We keep bringing in, building low-income housing, keep bringing in low-income people here. Eventually, Port Arthur gonna be a city of nothing but low income.
Hey, excuse me, Mr. Troy, I do apologize, but I just want to make sure I heard you correct. You said that the city hired a company to do the negotiations with the in industry?
Yes, it's a law firm that does industrial contracts. They look at industrial contracts and they design the contract that we presented to industry.
Okay, so it wasn't one person. It was pretty much.
No, it was a firm.
Hey, Ms. Prince, is that true? Was it the law firm that was hired for that?
What the law firm, sir?
No, I was asking, was it a company that deals with the negotiations with the industry contract?
It was a firm that had experience in dealing with industrial district agreements.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, ma'am.
That compliance officer that person's job is to oversee, to make sure that Port Arthur residents get hired. Is that
The compliance officer is there to see to it that the industry follows all of the guidelines set out in that contract, including the hires.
Next question. Is there something in place for us to find out if that is if the refinery is in compliance with?
Yeah, what happens if they're
numbers?
not? What if it happens if they're not?
Yeah, they do. They have to bring out a baseline. In other words, the first of the year, they had to come up and let us know how many people from Port Arthur that was in each plant. How many Port Arthur hirees they had in each plant. How many Port Arthur employees they had. From that baseline, that's a zero line. That's the zero level. Now, from that point on, any new hirees is what we count. And they have for each quarter, they have to report. The compliance officer is supposed to check with them and make sure that they're doing any new hires that they have.
That's on a quarterly basis.
That's on a quarterly basis.
When you guys, before, there was something in place before you guys did those agreements. There was something in, because when I worked in human resources at Flint Hills, there was something in our contract. I think it was 3%. Was it some refineries?
I don't know, but the problem was that every refinery had a different contract.
Okay.
We're gonna stop
Can I
right.
correct, look, Frank,
Go
let me
ahead.
correct, I just wanna correct something, you
Go
know,
ahead.
it's nice to listen. But I heard, this piece about, the city and providing, down payment assistance and programs to work with people who are aspiring to buy new homes. There are programs in place already for that kind of stuff. You can get up to a $30,000 home down payment assistance from the city. That's free. You know, this HUD money, but it's free money. And so I think it behooves us all, before we go into all of that, is to check and see what's already available, because it's there. And the other thing is, the city can't give a gift. So if Shirley decides she wants to go build she wants a business downtown, Shirley's got to come with something, because we can't pay Shirley's utilities and we can't pay her rent. There are some legalities that are involved, so all of it sounds good, but legally, it's just not good. So, you know, before you all start going and, you know, and believing all of that, you have to be careful about what's being said and what's not being said. But our housing department has some HUD programs there that are really good if you qualify. And you have to qualify even if you go to a bank, you've got to qualify. It doesn't matter what institution you go to, you have to qualify. And HUD has strict guidelines. So it would behoove us all to go there and get with Beverly Freeman and see what it is that the city has available when it comes to people owning homes.
And that's where I think it's important as a council member that get educated on those programs. You gotta bring that information back down to the citizens.
Exactly.
And you know, that's where my standing is, you know, is if I can get in as a council member, is I wanna be the caveat between the people and the city. The communications are broken somewhere, and if those programs are there, we don't know about it. So we need to be able to communicate that both directions.
We don't know where to
The people need to
start.
communicate to the city what their problems and issues and what they need, but and then they can educate the council member to go back to the city and say, okay, here's what you got, these are your options. So it needs to go back and forth. You gotta have your town halls, you gotta have little groups that meets like this, to where that communication starts getting open and it gets spread, and I think better communication is gonna be a huge key to fixing a lot of the issues that we have.
I want to thank everybody for coming out to this meeting, especially the candidates. It was informative. Yeah, Ms. Cheryl, she's gonna, in the next group.
Can you hold your question till I start?
We're just gonna switch groups real quick.
I'm not worried about the houses though.
Okay,
She's a
They really
concerned
loud
citizen.
here.
all right. I got to start my meeting, so, cause I can't conflict with, politics
Right.
with
Right.
501c3. So I gotta stay within
Right.
compliance of
We got
government law.